The radio crackled with a call sign we don't even use anymore, and it came through on a frequency our equipment isn't supposed to reach. I remember staring at the unit like it had just spoken my name, even though it hadn't. Not yet. It was just after 2 a.m., deep in the north sector of Pine Hollow Preserve, and I was halfway through a routine patrol loop that I'd done so many times I could drive it blind. My name's Aaron Delaney. I've been a park ranger for 9 years, and that night I wasn't alone out there. There were 3 of us on shift: me, Lisa Ortega at the main station, and Cole Granger covering the east trails. We were short-staffed like usual, and the weather had turned cold faster than forecast, dropping into the low 40s with a dry wind that carried sound farther than it should. I had just finished logging a downed tree near marker 12 when the first transmission came through. A burst of static followed by a calm male voice saying, "Unit 3, confirm your last position." The thing was, I am Unit 3, and I hadn't called anything in. I picked up the mic and responded automatically, giving my location and asking who was calling, thinking maybe dispatch had switched channels without telling us. There was no answer, just a low hum, like an open line, then silence. I checked the display. The frequency reading was wrong, not just slightly off, completely outside our assigned band. I toggled channels twice, even powered the radio down and back up, but when it came back online the same frequency was still displayed, like it had locked itself there. I called Lisa on the backup channel we keep for emergencies. She answered immediately, said everything sounded normal on her end, and that my primary unit was still showing idle from the station console. That didn't make sense, because I'd just transmitted. I asked if she'd heard the voice. She said no, but there had been a brief blip of interference about 30 seconds earlier, something she brushed off as atmospheric noise. I didn't push it. Weird radio glitches happen out here more than people think, especially with the old repeaters we use, so I logged it mentally and kept moving. About 5 minutes later, it happened again. Same voice, same tone, same impossible frequency. "Unit 3, you're off your route." This time it felt more direct, like whoever was speaking knew exactly where I was supposed to be. I checked my GPS tablet mounted on the dash. I was exactly where I should have been, following the designated patrol loop clockwise. I responded again, asked for identification, and told them to switch to the standard ranger channel. The voice came back almost immediately. Negative. Stay on this frequency. That's when I felt the first real shift in my gut. We don't get unauthorized transmissions like that, now with the encryption we use, even if it's outdated. I radioed Lisa again, told her something was off, and asked her to pull system logs. While I waited, I slowed the truck and killed the headlights for a moment, letting my eyes adjust to the dark. The forest was still. No wind through the branches, no animal movement, just that low mechanical tick of the engine cooling. Then I saw it, about 50 yards off the trail, a faint, steady light between the trees. Not moving, not flickering like a flashlight, just there. I flipped the headlights back on, and it disappeared instantly, like it had never been there. Lisa came back on the line and said there were no outgoing transmissions from my unit logged in the system, and no incoming signals on any of the monitored bands. According to her, my radio had been completely silent. I told her what I was seeing, about the light, about the voice, and she suggested I loop back toward the station, just to be safe. Before I could answer, the radio spoke again. "Do not return to base. Continue north." The voice was slightly different this time, same tone but with a faint distortion, like it was being played through something old or damaged. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I reached for my secondary handheld radio, the one we keep as a backup, and powered it on. It came up on the correct frequency, no issues. I called Cole, asked where he was. He said he was near the East Ridge, about a mile from my head. Position: dealing with an unauthorized campsite he'd just found. Still warm, no occupants. That was unusual for that hour, but not unheard of. I told him about the transmissions. He went quiet for a second, then said, "That's weird. I just heard something too." I asked him to repeat it. He said his radio had picked up a call sign that belonged to a ranger who retired 3 years ago, asking for backup near the old fire tower. That tower's been closed since before I started. Structurally unsafe. It's also nowhere near either of our patrol zones. While we were talking, my truck's radio clicked again. Unit 3, you're behind schedule. I snapped back, louder this time, demanding identification and stating that unauthorized use of ranger frequencies is a federal offense. The response came slower, like whoever, or whatever, was on the other end was thinking, "You logged out already. Why are you still there?" That sentence didn't make sense until later, but at that moment it just made my skin crawl. I checked my watch, 2:17 a.m. My shift didn't end until 6. There was no reason for any log to show me signed out. I told Lisa to check the logbook at the station, the physical one we still keep for redundancy. She didn't answer right away. When she came back, her voice was tight. She said my name was already signed out at 1:52 a.m., with my initials and everything, noted as patrol complete, returning to quarters. I felt a cold wave hit my chest. I was still out here. I had been the whole time. There's no way I could have signed out. I asked her to check the handwriting. She said it looked exactly like mine. At that point, I told Cole to head toward my location, and I started the truck again, turning north despite Lisa telling me to come back. I don't know why I listened to the voice instead of her. Maybe it was the certainty in it, or maybe I just needed to see what was out there. The trail narrowed as I moved deeper into the restricted section, the one we usually avoid at night because of unstable ground and old service roads that aren't on current maps. The GPS started glitching about 10 minutes in, showing my position jumping back and forth along the route, sometimes even placing me near the station when I was clearly miles away. The radio stayed quiet for a while, which somehow made it worse. Then, just as I rounded a bend near an old maintenance shed we rarely use, the headlights caught something that shouldn't have been there. My truck. Same model, same department markings, parked crooked across the trail about 30 yards ahead. The driver's door was open. I hit the brakes hard and just sat there, engine idling, staring at it. The license plate matched mine. There was no mistake. I called Cole again, told him what I was seeing. He said he was 5 minutes out. I grabbed my flashlight, stepped out of the truck, and approached slowly, calling out standard identification. No response. The interior light of the other truck was on, casting a dim yellow glow over the seats. I could see the logbook on the passenger side, open. I moved closer, every step feeling wrong, like I was walking into something staged. When I reached the open door, I looked inside. The keys were in the ignition. The engine was off. The logbook had an entry on the last page. My name, my handwriting. Same time Lisa had mentioned. Patrol complete. I flipped back a page. There were notes I didn't remember writing. Downed tree at marker 12, radio check at 1:30. Even a comment about a faint light near the North Trail. Things I had experienced that night, but hadn't logged yet. It was like someone had already written the rest of my shift before it happened. The radio on the other truck suddenly came to life. Same frequency. Same voice. "You found it." I stepped back so fast I almost tripped. I raised my own radio, but it was dead silent. The voice continued, calmer now. "You shouldn't still be here." I asked who it was, what they wanted. There was a pause, longer than before. Then a single sentence. "We already cleared you." That's when I heard another engine approaching from behind me. I turned and saw Cole's headlights cutting through the trees, bouncing over the uneven trail. Relief hit me hard, but it didn't last. As his truck got closer, I realized something was off. His headlights were too high, too wide apart. When he pulled up beside me, it wasn't his vehicle. Same as mine. Same markings, same plate. The driver's door opened, and for a second, I thought I saw someone step out, but the light shifted, and there was nothing there. Just an empty seat, door hanging open. Cole's voice came through my hand-drilled radio, panicked now, saying he'd reached my last known position but couldn't find me. He was describing the maintenance shed, the bend in the trail, everything exactly where I was standing, but he kept saying it was empty. No vehicles, no lights, nothing. I shouted into the radio, told him I was right there, but he kept talking over me, like he couldn't hear a word. Behind me, the first truck's radio clicked again. Unit 3, return to base. I turned slowly, heart pounding, and saw that both trucks were now dark. No interior lights, no radios, just two identical silhouettes sitting in the middle of the trail. I backed away, step by step, until I reached my own vehicle, the one I had arrived in, the one that still felt real. I got in, locked the doors, and drove. I didn't stop until I hit the main road near the station. When I got back, Lisa and Cole were both there, waiting, looking at me like they'd seen a ghost. According to them, I'd been off the grid for nearly an hour, my GPS showing me stationary near the shed, but no visual confirmation. We went back out at first light with a full team. There was no second truck, no duplicate, just my tire tracks, leading in and out, and a set of footprints around the shed that matched my boots. The logbook at the station still had my signed-out entry. My handwriting, same time, same note. I never wrote it. They had it analyzed later, said it was a perfect match. What bothers me most isn't the trucks or the voice. It's that when I checked my own logbook, the one in my actual truck, there was a new entry at the bottom of the page that I know I didn't write. It was just one line, added after everything else, in the same pen I use. Returned to base at 2 minutes and 3 seconds a.m. That's 14 minutes before the first transmission came through. And I still don't know who signed me out, or why the radio thought I was already gone. The first transmission didn't ask for help. It warned me not to answer the next one. It came through clear, no static, no distortion, just a steady male voice on Channel 4, which we don't even use anymore. I was sitting alone in the West Lookout Tower, about 30 feet up, finishing a routine log entry at 11:38 p.m., when it cut in like someone had keyed a mic right next to me. Ranger at Tower 3, do not respond to any distress calls on your band. I froze with the pen still in my hand. Nobody calls it Tower 3 anymore. That designation was phased out years ago when they updated the sector naming. I grabbed the radio and checked the display. Channel 2, our active patrol frequency. Everything looked normal. I asked for identification, standard protocol, but the line went dead instantly, like whoever spoke had no intention of continuing the conversation. I called dispatch at the main station. It was just me and Darren on duty that night, with Kelly off-site doing perimeter checks near the southern boundary. Darren answered right away, said he hadn't heard anything unusual, no incoming calls, no interference spikes. According to him, my radio hadn't transmitted at all in the last 5 minutes. That didn't line up with what I'd just heard. I logged the time and message, marked it as unidentified transmission, and tried to shake it off. We get weird signals sometimes, old frequencies, civilian radios, bleeding through, but this one felt deliberate. About 3 minutes later, the next call came in. This one sounded different. Younger voice, female, panicked. Please, if anyone can hear me, I'm lost. I'm near the ridge trail. I think I broke my ankle. It was exactly the kind of call we trained for, the kind you don't ignore. But the warning from earlier was still singing in my head, and something about the timing felt off. I asked for her name and location, tried to get coordinates, but she kept repeating the same sentence, word for word, like a loop. No variation, no response to my questions, just that same plea. I switched to the secondary channel and called Darren again. He said he still wasn't picking anything up on his end. No distress calls, no unknown signals. I asked him to check the emergency frequency logs, the ones that monitor public bands. He came back after a few seconds and said there was nothing. Complete silence across all monitored channels. Meanwhile, the voice was still coming through my radio, perfectly clear, like it was being broadcast directly to me. I told Darren I was heading down from the tower to check the Ridge Trail access point, just in case. He hesitated, reminded me of the earlier warning, but I told him I couldn't ignore a possible injured hiker. That's the job. I grabbed my flashlight, secured the tower, and started down the metal stairs. Halfway down, the voice changed. It stopped mid-sentence, then restarted. Same tone but slightly off, like someone else trying to mimic it. I'm near the ridge trail. I think I broke my ankle. The pacing was wrong. The emphasis was different. It wasn't the same person anymore, or at least, it didn't sound like it. I reached the ground and headed toward the trailhead, about a quarter-mile east of the tower. The forest was unusually quiet. No wind, no insects, just the crunch of gravel under my boots and the occasional creak of branches shifting. I kept the radio close, listening. The voice continued every 30 seconds, exactly the same phrasing, no deviation. As I got closer to the trailhead, I noticed something that didn't sit right. The gate we keep locked at night was open. Not forced, just open. The padlock was still hanging there, unlatched. I'm the one who locked it earlier that evening. I always double-check. I made a note of it, then stepped onto the trail, sweeping my flashlight ahead. About 50 yards in, I found footprints. Barefoot. Small, maybe a woman's. But the spacing was wrong, too far apart, like whoever made them was taking exaggerated steps or running unevenly. They led off the main path into the brush, toward a section we don't maintain because of unstable ground. I called out, announced myself, standard procedure. No response, just that same voice over the radio, still repeating the same line. I followed the prints for about a minute, before they just stopped. No sign of a turn, no scuff marks, nothing. Just ended mid-step like the person had vanished. I stood there, scanning the area, trying to make sense of it, when the radio cut in again. But this time, it wasn't the woman. It was my own voice. I'm at the ridge trail. I found footprints. Going off path. I felt my chest tighten. That was exactly what I had just said to Darren 5 minutes earlier on Channel 2. But this was coming through on Channel 4, the dead one, and I hadn't transmitted anything on it. I grabbed a mic and told Darren to confirm what he was hearing. He came back confused, said my last transmission was still the one from the tower, about heading out. He hadn't received any update about footprints or leaving the trail. I told him to check again, to review the recording if he had to. While he did that, the radio played my voice again. Continuing into brush, possible injured hiker. Same words, same tone. It was like someone had recorded my transmission and was playing it back on a loop, but slightly delayed. The radio was the first Sun, Loud, Cred, and Cloud station, and 1 feet tied to the radio. I backed up slowly, retracing my steps toward the main trail. That's when I noticed another set of footprints, overlapping mine, but heading in the opposite direction, toward the trailhead. Same boots as mine, same tread pattern, same wear on the outer edge of the left heel. I crouched down and looked closer. They were fresh, deeper impressions than mine, like whoever made them was heavier, or moving faster. I stood up and turned around. The path behind me was empty, but the feeling that I wasn't alone hit hard. I started walking back faster, keeping my light moving, scanning both sides. The radio went quiet for a few seconds, then the original male voice came back. You were told not to answer. I didn't respond. I just kept moving. The trailhead came into view, the open gate still hanging there. As I stepped through, I heard movement behind me. Fast, heavy, like someone running through brush parallel to the path. I spun around and shined my light into the trees. Nothing. But the sound kept pace with me as I moved, staying just out of sight. I broke into a jog, heading back toward the tower. The radio crackled again, and this time it was Darren, sounding tense. He said he'd reviewed the logs, and there was a transmission from my unit on Channel 4, about 2 minutes before I left the tower. Not on Channel 2, not on any active band. Channel 4. The message was short. Do not respond to any distress calls. My stomach dropped. I asked him to confirm the timestamp. 11:35 p.m. That's 3 minutes before I heard the warning. According to the system, I had sent that message myself. I reached the base of the tower and didn't stop. I climbed the stairs 2 at a time, got inside, locked the door, and shut off the external lights. From up there, you can see a good stretch of the surrounding forest if your eyes adjust. I stood at the window, breathing hard, scanning the tree line. For a moment, everything looked normal. Then I saw it. Movement along the trail I had just come from. A figure, maybe 50 yards out, standing perfectly still. I raised the binoculars we keep in the tower and focused in. It was a person, wearing a ranger uniform. Same jacket, same hat, same reflective patches. I couldn't see the face clearly, but the build, the stance, it looked exactly like me. It lifted its hand slowly, like it was reaching for a radio mic on its shoulder. At the same time, my radio on the desk lit up. Channel 4. My voice came through again, calm and steady. Returning to tower. All clear. I didn't say that. I was already in the tower. The figure outside turned slightly, like it was looking directly at me, even though there's no way it could have seen through the dark that clearly. Then it stepped off the trail and into the trees, disappearing almost instantly. I stayed up there the rest of the night. Didn't respond to any more calls. Didn't leave until sunrise when Darren drove out to meet me. We went back to the trail together. The gate was closed and locked. No sign it had ever been opened. The bare footprints were gone. So were the extra boot prints. The only thing we found was a single set of my own tracks leading from the tower to the trailhead and back, exactly as expected. No deviation, no off-path movement. According to the physical evidence, I never left the trail. Darren pulled the radio logs again later that day. There were 3 transmissions on Channel 4 that night, all from my unit ID. The warning, the message about footprints, and the final, all clear. The timestamps matched everything I experienced, but I only remember saying one of those things, and that was on a completely different channel. We sent the radio in for diagnostics. They said it was functioning normally. No faults, no unauthorized access. Channel 4 isn't even supposed to be active on that model anymore. It's just there, disabled. What bothers me now is something I didn't notice until the next shift. When I went to sign in for duty, the logbook already had my name written for that day, hours before I arrived. Same handwriting, same pen I use. The note next to it just said, "Stayed in tower, ignored calls." I don't remember writing that, and I don't know how the system knew I would. The call came through as a mayday from a ranger who doesn't exist in our district records, and it included my exact patrol coordinates before I'd even checked in. I was on late shift, just after midnight, covering the canyon sector along Red Ridge Trail, a place with tight switchbacks and poor signal coverage. My name's Tyler Boone. I've worked that park for 6 years, and I know every radio dead zone and blind corner out there. That's why the call didn't make sense. It came in clear, no static, no drop, just a calm voice saying, "Ranger Unit 5 requesting assistance at your location, immediate." We don't have a Unit 5. Our numbering only goes up to 4 on night shifts. I checked my GPS tablet, hadn't even logged my position yet, and the coordinates the voice gave were exactly where I was parked, engine off, finishing a perimeter note about a broken trail marker. I picked up the radio and asked for identification, expecting maybe a neighboring district unit or a misrouted signal. The response came back without hesitation. "Unit 5. I'm already here." I looked up from the dash and scanned the road ahead. Nothing but empty dirt trail and scrub brush, the canyon walls rising steep on both sides. No headlights, no movement. I stepped out of the truck, flashlight in hand, and called out, "Standard protocol." No answer, just the faint echo of my own voice bouncing off the rock. I got back on the radio and called dispatch. Jenna was on duty at the station, and she said there were no other units logged in the canyon sector, and definitely no Unit 5. She checked the system while I waited, then confirmed there was no record of any ranger with that designation, current or past. While we were talking, the radio clicked again. Same voice. "You didn't see me when you drove in." That line stuck with me, because I had driven that road slow, headlights sweeping every turn. There's nowhere to hide a vehicle out there without it being obvious. I asked Jenna to stay on the line, and told her I was going to do a quick sweep of the immediate area. She agreed but told me to keep updates constant. I started walking along the trail, moving about 20 yards out from my truck, checking the edges where someone might have stepped off the road. That's when I noticed the tire tracks. Fresh, not mine. Running parallel to the trail but slightly off to the side, like a vehicle had been pacing me just out of view. The tracks weren't deep, maybe a lighter vehicle, but they were recent enough that the edges hadn't crumbled yet. I followed them for a short distance, and they led behind a cluster of rocks where the terrain dipped slightly. When I rounded the corner, I expected to see a parked vehicle. There was nothing there. Just bare ground and a faint oil smell in the air, like something had been idling recently. I reported it to Jenna, and she said she still had no visual on any other unit through the system. No GPS pings, no check-ins. I was alone out there, at least officially. The radio came alive again, but this time it wasn't just the voice. There was background noise, footsteps, crunching gravel, the sound of fabric brushing against something. "You're walking away from me," it said, almost casually. I turned slowly, scanning the trail behind me. My truck sat where I left it, headlights off, a dark shape against the canyon wall. No one else in sight. I asked the voice to identify itself again, louder this time, and told them to step into the open. There was a pause, then a short reply. "You already did that." I felt that same tightness in my chest you get when something doesn't line up but you can't prove why. I started back toward my truck, quicker now, keeping my light moving. Halfway there, I noticed another set of footprints crossing the trail. Boot prints, same size as mine, same tread pattern, but heading in the opposite direction, like someone had just walked past me without being seen. I crouched down and checked them. The impressions were fresh, deeper than mine, like whoever made them was carrying more weight. I stood up and turned in the direction they were going. The trail curved out of sight, but I could hear something faint, like a door closing, muffled by distance. I got back to the truck and climbed in, locking the doors. Behind me, I told Jenna what I found, and she said she was dispatching another ranger from the north sector to meet me, though it would take at least 20 minutes. I wasn't thrilled about waiting that long. The radio clicked again. "You're in my vehicle." That one made me look down at the dash, at the controls, at everything I'd touched 100 times before. It was my truck. Same scratches on the steering wheel, same coffee stain near the console. But the voice sounded certain, like it wasn't guessing. I turned the key slightly, checking the system readout. Everything looked normal, except for one thing. The mileage was off, higher than it should have been. Not by a lot, maybe 8 or 9 miles, but I hadn't driven that far yet on my shift. I mentioned it to Jenna, and she didn't have an explanation. While we were talking, the radio shifted frequencies on its own. The display flickered, numbers changing too fast to read, then settled on something I'd never seen before. It wasn't part of any band we use, not even close. The voice came through again, clearer than before. "You signed out already. Why did you come back?" That phrase hit me wrong. I hadn't signed out, my shift had just started. I told Jenna to check the logbook, both digital and physical. She went quiet for a moment, then came back sounding uneasy. She said my name was already listed as off-duty, time-stamped nearly an hour earlier, with a note saying I had completed patrol in the canyon sector and returned to base. I felt my grip tighten on the wheel. I was still out here. I had never gone back. I asked her to check the handwriting in the physical log. She said it matched mine perfectly. The radio crackled again, and this time the voice was closer, like it was right outside the truck. "You left something behind." I looked up, scanning the road ahead, then checked the mirrors. Nothing. But there was a faint reflection in the rear view that hadn't been there before, a shape just beyond the tailgate, low to the ground. I turned slowly in my seat and looked at the back window. At first, I thought it was just shadow, but then it shifted slightly, like someone crouched down behind the truck, staying just out of full view. I grabbed the flashlight and stepped out, circling around carefully. There was no one there. Just dust and the faint outline of those same boot prints, leading right up to the back of the vehicle and stopping. No tracks leading away. I got back inside, locked the doors again, and told Jenna I was staying put until backup arrived. She agreed. The minutes dragged. The radio stayed quiet for a while, which somehow made it worse. Then, without warning, it lit up again. My voice. Unit 3, Canyon Sector clear. Returning to base. That's my call sign. But I hadn't said that. Not that night. Not ever in that exact phrasing. Jenna came through immediately. After asking me to confirm the transmission, I told her I didn't send it. She said the system showed it coming from my unit ID just seconds earlier. While we were both trying to process that, headlights appeared down the trail, approaching fast. I felt a wave of relief, assuming it was the backup ranger. But as the vehicle got closer, something felt off. The light pattern was wrong, too narrow, too close together. When it rounded the bend, I saw it clearly. Same make and model as my truck. Same department markings, same license plate. It rolled to a stop about 20 feet in front of me, engine idling. The driver's door opened slowly. I leaned forward, trying to see inside, but the interior was dark. Then the radio spoke again, not from my unit, but from the other truck. You can switch back now. I didn't move. I didn't respond. I just sat there, watching. After a few seconds, the engine of the other truck shut off, and everything went silent. No movement, no sound. I reached for the mic and told Jenna what I was seeing. She said the backup ranger was still 10 minutes out, nowhere near my location yet. I looked back at the other vehicle. It hadn't moved. The door was still open. I don't know what made me do it, but I stepped out again, keeping my distance this time, and called out. No answer. I took a few steps closer, flashlight raised. The beam cut through the darkness and lit up the interior. The seat was flow. Empty. But the radio on the dashboard was on, its display showing that same, impossible frequency. As I got closer, it crackled to life. My voice again. You can switch back now. I stopped. The words felt like they were directed at me, like I was supposed to understand something I didn't. Behind me, my own truck's engine suddenly turned over. I spun around, the headlights flicked on, blinding me for a second. I hadn't touched the keys. The radio inside it lit up, and I heard the original voice one last time. We logged you out already. I backed away slowly, heart pounding, eyes moving between the two vehicles. Then, as suddenly as it started, everything went quiet. The headlights shut off. Both trucks sat dark and still. A few minutes later, the real backup ranger arrived. Just one vehicle, mine, parked where I left it. No second truck, no extra tracks. We searched the area thoroughly. Found nothing but my own tire marks and footprints. Jenna checked the logs again later that morning. There were 2 sign-outs under my name for that night, both in my handwriting, both with different times. One of them matched when I actually returned to base. The other was nearly an hour before my shift even started. They cleared one as an error, said the system probably duplicated an entry. But they couldn't explain why the mileage on my truck was still higher than it should have been, or why the radio briefly tuned itself to a frequency that doesn't exist in any of our records. What bothers me now is that when I checked my logbook at the end of the shift, there was a final note at the bottom of the page that I don't remember writing. Just a single sentence, in my handwriting, same pen. Switch back at 12:47 a.m. I checked the timestamp on my radio logs later. That's exactly when the second truck showed up, and I still don't know which one of us drove away.